A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, let's go to a great attorney, one of the best ones out there, Professor Alan Dershowitz. It's so beautiful to have you here. Happy holidays, Professor.
Well, happy holidays to everybody, but let's point the finger at the right person for at least some blame on this horrible burning incident. And that's District Attorney Bragg. By bringing a prosecution against Penny and making him go through all of that as a result of his being a good Samaritan, he sent a message to the New Yorkers: turn your back, go away, don't do anything, don't get involved, don't try to put out the fire. You never know, we may come after you if somebody gets hurt. That's the message that was sent by the prosecution of Penny. It's a terrible, terrible message.
You know, Professor Dershowitz, you're right. What a sad situation that people are afraid to get dragged in. I also wonder, too, Professor, if just New Yorkers, sadly, have become so desensitized because, sadly, there's so much crime. Maybe it's a combination of the two.
Well, but, the Democrats tried to run on the theory that crime is actually down. They actually made that point over and over again. And, of course, everybody in America knows that they're much more frightened today than they were a few years ago. And you can't make arguments to the American public that make them look like fools or says to them what you see with your own eyes isn't true. So, of course, we're seeing an increase in the perception of crime and the reality of crime in certain kinds of crimes. And that's, I think, largely the fault of district attorneys who are making terrible decisions, bringing, in Greg's case, a fake case against Donald Trump and then bringing the wrong case against Penny. Now he's lucky. Now he has a case that even he can't lose, obviously, the shooter. And he's going to make the most of it. Now, whether that case gets tried in federal court or state courts, we still don't know. What people don't realize is
I think they made a decision, Professor. The decision was
would they make?
The state's going to go first.
Well, let me tell you why that's important.
Right.
Because if the state goes first, there's no double jeopardy argument.
Right.
Whereas if the federal government went first, there is a double jeopardy argument because New York has a double jeopardy clause that applies if there's a federal prosecution, whereas the federal government doesn't. If you go state first, you can go to the federal. So if that's the decision, that's a very, very wise decision constitutionally.
Professor Dershowitz, as we're talking about the Luigi case, how would you defend him? I mean, Rudy brought up the insanity, which it sort of looked like maybe his defense attorney may go there. But there seems to me, and I'm not a lawyer, I try to have your intelligence rub off on me. But there seems to be so much premeditation. I mean, he comes to New York, he plans it, he has the manifesto.
I have an article in today's The Hill, and the question is, how would I defend him? And I say, since the arrest, everybody walks up to me in the street, literally walks up to me in the street, and they say, oh, you're Dershowitz, how would you defend him? So, and the answer is, I don't know, because it wouldn't be my decision. I don't know whether or not this guy wants to raise an insanity defense. You can't impose an insanity defense on somebody. He may want to get up in front of the jury and say, I did the right thing. The insurance industry, et cetera. He may want to go down the way his hero Kaczynski did. So he may not want to raise the insanity defense. If he does want to raise the insanity defense, it will be very uphill for precisely the reasons you gave. Now, one of the reasons they charged him with terrorism is precisely to blunt the insanity defense. Because if he's charged with terrorism, then you can introduce all the arguments about how rational it was, how he wrote all this stuff out, how it was reasonable. That's not the actions of an insane person. So the terrorism charge was added in order to make the insanity charge more difficult. So, look, his lawyer is a terrific lawyer, a great woman, and she's the right person for this job. But I just don't see how she's not going to get a plea bargain. She's not going to win on the insanity defense. She wouldn't raise an innocence defense, that is, that he didn't do it at all, because that would destroy her credibility. So I think we're going to see a trial. I think we're going to see a conviction, and I think we're going to see a life imprisonment sentence with no possibility of parole. I just don't think there's going to be a plea bargain, because why should either the state or the federal government plea bargain a case that they know they're going to win with a lot of positive publicity?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Professor, also, did you see this? That President Biden has vetoed a bill to add 66 federal judges, sort of, you know, anticipating that Trump would appoint them. So he's trying to do whatever. It's like he's trying to do all these legal hurdles to block him.
But they can undo that as soon as the Trump administration comes in. Trump could not veto the bill. He can get the bill passed again, and then it wouldn't be vetoed. So, some of the things that Biden is doing are permanent, like the pardons for some of the killers that he's commuted. That can't be undone. But many of the other things that he's trying to do at the end can be relatively easily undone. And he has a good legal team behind him. Pam Bondi is a phenomenal lawyer, and she is the perfect person to be running the Justice Department at this point, because she's both loyal to the president, but she's also independent and brilliant in her own right. I worked with her. We were co-counsel on the first impeachment, and I have the world of respect for her.
Professor, what if we find out that those 1,500 commutations of pardons were auto-pinned and the president never really read them? Could Pam litigate that and undo it?
I don't think so. I think as long as the president signs the statement, I don't think you can look behind it. President Carter pardoned everybody who went to Canada without looking at individual cases. I know, because I have friends who went to Canada to escape the draft and then came back. So, the commutation and pardon power is the most unlimited power in the Constitution. The president doesn't have to explain it, doesn't have to know what he's doing. As long as he says it, it's done. So I think that's a fait accompli.
So before we let you go, Professor Dershowitz, there's a lot of stories out there about you, all great, of course, and saying that you might be an anti-Semitism envoy or something in the Trump administration. Since we got you, they would be lucky to have you. Would you want to do that? Or is
there any breaking news?
Yeah, any hot news?
No, my preference is to be completely independent, to be able to offer my advice to the president. I met with him last week, and I told him that, and we had a very interesting exchange about that. But I want to be independent. I don't want to work within the confines of the State Department or the government. I'm 86 years old. Time for me to be on my own.
You're younger than Al
D'Amato. To the president. I know, but I'll give my advice to the president. If he accepts it, fine. If he doesn't, he's the president. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be Elon Musk. I'm not going to be around him. But when the occasion arises, I will offer my advice, particularly on the Middle East and particularly on warfare. On any attempt to misuse the legal system, he knows he can count on my advice, because I've been advising him mostly through the media, but sometimes even more directly, like when I defended him against the misuses of warfare. I was in court one day when he was being tried in New York, and I saw with my own eyes what a horrible miscarriage of justice that case was. And, I told him so, and I'm happy to continue to advise. I want him to be a great president. I want us to have 4 great years. I'm rooting for America, as every American should do, no matter who you voted for.
Absolutely. Well, we are always rooting for you, and we love you. Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you so much.
Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas and
thank
all
you.
the good holidays.
Thank you. We love you. You too. Thank you so much.